Well, it's interesting because you think about like what your body's built to detox. It's what's supposed to do, right? The problem is if you are overloading it too fast, it can't keep up. The only way for it to be overloaded so fast is there for it to be so much that's loading it that it can't keep up. And that's not one thing, two things, three things. That's a number of things that are compounding. And then you have longer term exposure to it. And you add those two, it's no different than toxicology. It's dose and duration. If you have high dose, which is multiple areas of mold in your house, and you have high duration, which is I live in my house all the time, you're probably going to have a reaction to that.
Welcome to the Pure Wellness Podcast, where we talk about what it takes to live a holistic lifestyle by making conscious, healthier choices. Our hope is that these discussions will inspire you to strengthen your daily practice to improve overall physical, mental, emotional, and social well-being. Pure Wellness Podcast provides information solely for educational purposes and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I'm your host, Johanna Altman, founder of One Body Medicine, avid health enthusiast, and mother of three. Join me and industry professionals as we explore human potential in the pursuit of pure wellness. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Pure Wellness Podcast. And today is actually episode 3 of my mold journey. I'm going to be talking about our process for vetting and proceeding with a mold inspection company, our experience with them, as well as actual findings for the mold inspection, which I think you will find quite shocking. Here with me today is Brian Karr of We Inspect, co-founder. Thank you, Brian, for being here.
Thanks for having me. Really excited.
I'm more excited to kind of uncover what you and I have been going through the past few weeks.
Yeah.
So let's talk about mold.
Let's talk about mold all day, guys. Here we go.
So for the viewers that might not know who you are, I've had the pleasure of getting to know you in more depth and detail over the past few weeks. Let us know your background, how you came to co-found We Inspect, and move forward from there. Yeah.
So I'll tell you one thing. People don't go to school to be like a mold guy. Like that's not a thing people go to school for. So it's really interesting. It correlates so much with like the health space too. Like even if you're going down the medical side, most people are not going down like this functional path more recently, but like historically that wasn't really a thing. And so I didn't go to school for any of that stuff. I think like a lot of people who get into the health and wellness space, there's some sort of thing that happened to them or a family member or something. And then all of a sudden their eyes just kind of open up. They're like, whoa, what is this? And then from there, you have some people that are like, this is amazing. I want to be a part of this. And you have other people that just like learn and they kind of take that with them, right? I was kind of the first person. And so what happened to me is I lived in an apartment in West Hollywood. All those buildings are old. You'll know all about this, right? All those buildings are old. And I was in I actually went to school for advertising and marketing. So I worked at an agency out here and I had just been laid off during like one of the economic downturns, right? So I was literally sitting in my bed and I'm typing on my computer. And I literally wrote this. I wrote job that will make me feel fulfilled. I wrote this in monster.com. I remember this. I don't know why I remember this, but like I didn't really feel like I was doing anything in advertising, right? I would have somebody be like, hey, our fiscal's running out. I need you to spend $3 million in a month. And I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, what am I doing? And so I'm sitting here on my bed looking for a new job, not even knowing what I want to do. And then all of a sudden, I'm like typing and I feel something like on my hand. And I look at my hand and there's like a little water drip on my hand. And so I'm like, okay. So then I track up and I look up at the ceiling. And it's like one of those time lapse videos, like you do a time lapse. It's something that takes forever, happens really fast, right? Well, it wasn't time lapsed. It was happening in real time, but that's what it looked like. And I look up and I see where the drip came from. And then I see the stain and I see the stain getting bigger and bigger. Then I see the ceiling starting to drip, right? Like
was it raining that day or was it?
It was a pipe leak from the unit above me.
Oh God.
And I'm like, my ceiling is going to collapse on me right now. And I grab my computer and I dive out of my bed and water starts coming down on my bed. Freaking crazy. Hold
on. That's a sign, I feel like, because This all like is too coincidental, but go ahead.
I know. You're like, I want something that'll make me, and then water starts falling on me. It's like literally a sign from the heavens that this is what you need to be doing. I'll find that out later. But at this part of the story, I don't really know this was happening. So I do what every single person does who knows nothing about mold or water damage, which is most people. And I call my landlord. And they're like, oh, there's, our property guy's on site. He'll come. So they stop the water thing pretty quickly. Still, a whole bunch of water fell into my room. And they do what they all do. They come in, they dry it up. They're like, whatever. Like, okay, you're all good. We'll get the ceiling repaired in the next, however long, whatever. So I'm like, okay. And so I kind of go about my days, my weeks, and I start noticing that I'm like feeling different. Right. And I'm like a fast talker. I'm sharp. I'm like quick. That's just kind of how I naturally am. And all of a sudden, like things aren't coming as fast to me. And I'm having to like pause a little longer, and I'm losing words here or there or whatever. And keep in mind, I'm not going to work anymore right now, right? Because I've just been laid off. So it's kind of like what happened in COVID when everybody was locked in their home. And so we saw this too on our end now. Like at that time period, I was concerned during COVID that there was going to be a downturn in our business, right? Just because of people are afraid to have you come in their house. There's all these things. It went the complete other way. Really? Because people were in their houses where there was mold problems and they were getting no relief. And so now all of a sudden they're like, come in and find all this stuff, right? It was crazy actually. And it was really eye-opening about like how you spend time in places. And so it's kind of started happening with me. And, my wife now, I had just started dating at that time. And I'm telling her about what's going on. She's like, this sounds like a lot like what my dad talks about with his clients. Well, her dad happened to be like the top mold expert in the country, if not the world, basically. And she's like, he talks about clients that have these different symptoms. Another thing, I went to wash my face one morning and eczema all over my face one day out of nowhere.
Wow.
And she's like, you should have him come in and see what's going on. And I was like, is this how I want to meet your dad? Like,
you hadn't met him yet?
No,
I agree.
Early.
I would have second guessed that as well.
It's like, hi, I don't know you. Can you check my place? So I didn't call him right. I was like, no. And so what did I do? I went back to the landlord. And here's the thing, like you think that your landlord, because they own all these buildings and stuff, that they know this stuff, right? And the reality is one, they don't. And two, they don't want to know it because it only hurts their bottom line. Yeah,
and they don't really care enough to a point to do 100% of what's going to be best for your health. Right. We know that.
Yeah. And this kind of showed that to me, And so they're like, well, you don't have mold problems, try, but we'll get a mold guy in here and we'll do some testing and whatever. Right. And so they did what every local inspector does basically, is they brought some guy in, he put an air sample in the middle of a room. He took one test. He left 15 minutes later. And the next day, no mold in your place. You're fine. You're crazy. Nothing wrong with the place, right? And I'm like, so I tell I'll just refer to her as my wife because she got there. So I tell my wife this, and she's like, no, call my dad and like have him come in. And so he comes in. His name is Mark Levy. He comes in and he spends 2 hours in an 800 square foot apartment. The other guy was there for 15 minutes. He spent 2 hours in an 800 square foot apartment. He found, I want to say like 8 or 9 different things throughout the whole apartment, but specifically in my room where this issue happened, all of the walls that I was sleeping in my room had a massive mold problem behind all of them. So what happens when like water hits a surface, right? So like think, kitchen island, right? You pour water on your island, water's going to go sideways, right? Because that's where it goes. Then it goes to the end of the island. And then where does it go? It falls off because there's no more horizontal surface. So like with that amount of water that came out of that pipe, there was so much water, it all started going sideways.
Oh my goodness.
And then it went down all the walls. And so I was basically sleeping in a toxic box for months. And that's what was causing all of this.
Well, the thing that catches my attention when you tell me this story, and we'll elaborate on this, is that when the landlord sent his maintenance guy to fix it, what did he fix? Just the one square of drywall that had actually collapsed, which is the visible site of where they think, the damage is, without looking at everything, right?
It's exactly what it was. And it's a lot of people in my industry. It's tough because I almost feel like we have like our own industry in a way.
Well, you do. Yeah. And I want to talk about the niche market that We Inspect has created for itself that's why the story is so fascinating. So continue. So your father-in-law finds 8 or 9 different things.
Mm-hmm. And so I ask him, or he asked me, I say this, I remember this conversation really well. And this actually, I think, framed how I talk with people even now. He's such an amazing person. And he is he cares about other people so much. And so we go through this. And again, I like just kind of met him, right? And so I'm talking to him. He's like, okay, so we have all these problems. So I'm kind of like, okay, not knowing what to do. This is what like clients feel like, right? Like I started at that point. It's like, what do I do? I don't know what this means. I just know it's bad. Like, what do I do? And he asked me, he's like, well, what do you want to happen? I'm like, what do you mean? What do I want to happen? Like that question hadn't even come up. He's like, well, do you want to stay here? Do you not want to stay here? Like, let's talk about what the paths and the options are of what you want. And then once we know kind of what you want, then we figure out how to get there. Right. And I was like, oh, he's like, so do you want to stay here? And I was like, I mean, it's a whatever apartment in West Hollywood. Right. And I know this all going on. And I know this guy it's going to be a hassle for me to try to get a handle just from what we've done so far.
That's right.
And I'm like, not really. Like, he's like, okay, cool. So then let's just figure out how to get you out of here. Right. Which is very different than we want to fix what's going on. How do we fix it the right way? It's like a completely different conversation. Which is my story.
Right. You had such an easy exit.
Yeah.
Like I'm jealous of that exit.
Well, it's, the benefit of renting. You can run away.
Right.
That's true.
That's true.
And so, he helped me get out of my lease and kind of work that out. I actually ended up getting paid to leave, because he's an expert witness. This guy is like, you don't mess with this guy when it comes to this stuff. And anyways, he helped me get out. And so after all that was done, I still don't have a job, right? I still don't have a job. I look at him like, I want to do this. This is amazing. Like I saw what the first inspector did. I saw what you did. I saw how you helped me. Like it was just a completely different thing. And he looks at me, it's like, okay. He's like, I'm still not dating my wife for that long yet. It's like, I'm all in on her clearly.
And now you want to get into the family business.
I'm getting into bed with the family business. And he's like, all right, why don't you shadow me for a month? He's like, your marketing jobs will all be there. He's like, shadow me for a month. If you like it, cool. Right. And so that's what I did. And just and then I saw like my story and versions happening every single place we went to.
Oh, wow.
I was like, this is nuts. Like,
it is. It's almost, and that's why I am so curious as to how Mark had the foresight at the time to even create this type of inspection process, this type of company. It's such an outlier.
I'll tell you. So Mark has a twin brother, which is hilarious in its own right, the two of them. One lives in New York or New Jersey, New York area. Mark lived in LA, Southern California. They previously were in telecom. So they were like vice presidents at whatever telecom company and helped build these big things. And then they reinvented themselves and they got out of that industry. And Mark's brother, who's Steve, so Mark and Steve Levy, had a friend who was like, oh, I'm getting in this mold inspection thing. He's like, you should try this out, right? And this is so they know nothing, right? So Steve is like, okay, like I'll try this out and see what it's like. And so he does it for a year. And then, the twins, of course, they're going to talk to each other all the time, right? And so Mark then gets into it. And then this goes back to the type of people that they are, right? So I think this is what the big difference is. And I think the two of them, we internally, we call them the godfathers of We Inspect. The two of them, because of their personalities and the amount that they just care for people is what created this, right? So like they'll go into homes and they'll have people complaining about, oh, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling that way, this, that, or the other. Most inspectors are going to be like, well, I'm going to take my tests and I'm going to be out because I'm trying to run a business. And the more of these I do, the more, whatever.
And they're not educated. Unfortunately, there's no standardized trainings,
Absolutely.
So that adds to it.
Yeah, it's tough. And so they weren't really either. I mean, they learned just like every other person at that point, right? Like,
which is amazing.
They were coming
to
in.
See
yeah.
how they did this.
And so they start getting these clients that are talking about their health stuff. And so what do? They're like, we should go learn about this health stuff because we want to help these clients. So they start going to medical conferences that have a focus on like environmental health. And they show up to these conferences. And like years ago when they were doing this, so this is like 20 years ago, you'd go to a conference and there'd be like 10, 15 doctors there. It's not like now you go to these conferences and there's like hundreds that are there, right? Like these were still really small. They would go in the room, and in these rooms, since they're so small and intimate, everybody's like, oh, what do you do? Where do you practice? What do you do? And they would go to the twins and they'd be like, oh, we're not doctors. And they're like, well, what are you doing here? And then they would explain like why they're there. And then the doctors are like, oh my God, we need this. And they were like, this is the light bulb. Like, this is the thing. And they took that and they just started figuring out how to do it better. And they figured out the questions that most people would ask, which is, sure, I have a mole problem. Where's it coming from and how do I fix it? Well, you know what doesn't tell you that answer? An air sample in the middle of a room. So how do we figure out where to find it, right? And so they started like kind of building the entire structure of how you go through a space, learning all the science behind it. I mean, these guys are incredible. And so that's what they did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And here you are.
And here I am.
Helping
so I just
me
married
with
in.
my mold problem, except I can't just leave. Okay, so I love that story, and I didn't know that about Mark and Steve. What a great story.
Yeah.
And so I want to tell everyone how I met you, which I've mentioned in other episodes, which is through our functional diagnostic nutritionist, Paulina Ferrari. She speaks the world of you guys. And, you know, when these ERMI tests came back, which was just supposed to give us an idea if there were toxic levels of mold in the home, she said, we inspect. And so I contacted you guys, and Corey was my lead guy, who's your co-founder.
Corey's my cousin and co-founder. Yeah.
Love him. And, and when the inspector came and we booked the appointment, it was like 3 8-hour days. The guy came in a hazmat suit. And I'm like, are we searching for aliens? What are we doing? But I will tell you, I was home for those 3 days for 8 hours a day, and the inspector was very thorough. I did feel like we got what we'd paid for. And what was even more impressive was when I got the final report, which was 700 and plus pages. I didn't have a heart attack about it, because what I love about your process is when the report came in, it was, let's sit down, let's talk about this, so that you understand how to go about the report. And then I like that there was a tier A through E in the summary page. And that allowed me as a homeowner to say, my husband and I to say, okay, these are priority, tier A, B, C, D, all the way down to E. And so it was like digestible chunks. It was something that I could internalize. It was overwhelming, but I think that going through the report with you and the way that you guys have the reports, can you talk more about that? I like that you could click on an area, and instead of having to scroll through all of these pages, it was like hyperlinked to that specific part of the home with the photos, the testing results, and everything. Did you guys create that software?
Yeah. So it's our software.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. We license it out to other inspection companies to use as well to help them with their process. So again, go back to the Mark and Steve land of God. I mean, them and Corey were like, we need a better way to do this. Yeah. Right. Because when you get on the phone with clients, like you're describing it, like, you have a larger place, 700 pages is a very big report, but it's not uncommon for it to be like 200 pages, right? And so it's a lot to digest. It's like, okay, we have to figure out a way to communicate this with people so they don't get scared and they feel empowered by the information.
Guess what? We're still scared, Brian.
Well,
technology is great, but we're still scared.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But the to be able to have some context around it and to feel like that there's a path and a plan around it, instead of like, here's a dump of stuff and you're effed. Right.
100%.
And so, that they helped build the platform, and we're actually doing a complete rehaul on it right now. I'm really pumped for what the new version is going to look like.
To improve. Yeah. It's
really great.
As of right now, I feel it's user friendly. It really helped me kind of go through the report, the areas of importance, the tier A type stuff. I wanted to dive deeper into just explaining to the audience my experience as a broker, my husband's experience when we're dealing with mold inspectors, like for a real estate transaction, and how that might be different than in this case, because there's such a huge night and day difference.
Yeah.
And people need to hear this.
Yeah.
So if I'm buying a property and I'm in escrow and there are visible signs of black mold, maybe in the shower, the ceiling, underneath a sink, there might be some mildew or whatnot. Part of the inspection phase is that we call out specialists, and we might get a mold inspector to come out. And the type of testing that they do are these air samples. You had mentioned if you take an air sample in the middle of the room, it's not accurate, right? Can you explain a little bit more as to why that is the case?
Yeah. Just imagine this. You're upstairs. You're working in your office. I'll say me. I'm in my office upstairs. My wife is downstairs. She's an amazing cook. My wife is cooking dinner. In my office, I don't smell it. As I come out of my office, maybe I start to smell it. I walk down the stairs. It smells more and more. I get in the kitchen by the pot where it's coming from, and it smells incredible, right? The closer you are to the source, the more accurate your analysis is going to be, right? The same thing holds with a house. If I'm in a room that's even just a normal bedroom, a 10 by 10 foot bedroom, not some crazy room, and I put an air pump in the middle of this room, and there's a mold issue behind a wall 5 feet away with a piece of wall in front of it, that air sample's not going to know that. It's too far and there's too much going on. And the test isn't sensitive enough and collected in the right manner to be able to tell you what's going on. Yet this is what every mold
Everybody
inspector does.
is doing this.
Yeah.
All the mold inspectors that we're using, that we have had relationships with, or even those that we don't, this is the sampling they're doing. Nonetheless, having said that, when it comes back, when these results do come back positive, there's a double whammy here, okay? Because we're testing in the wrong places. And let's say it does come back positive. Mm-hmm. We're not looking anywhere else other than where the sampling has gone. So it's like a very specific scope of area that we're looking at versus taking 10 steps back and looking at the big picture. It's like a snapshot. So when Matt and that's what I deal with in real estate all the time. That's how it's done. There are no requirements in the state of California, I believe. I read a statistic, I think it's here, which is pretty shocking. According to the California Department of Public Health, there is no state legal requirement for training, licensing, or certification for mold assessors who identify mold or dampness problems. There you go. That's why the air sample is being taken in the middle of the room.
They don't even know what to do. They're like, oh, well, this air sample, you breathe the air. It must make sense, right?
And it's a snapshot versus looking at using other tests, which I want to reiterate, that can look at dust that is settled over a period of time, which are the ERMI tests, right? So going forward again, the reason why I think it's important to understand how these mold inspectors operate in real estate transactions, because that's maybe majority of people who have experience with mold inspectors, if they've ever had it, has been in a real estate transaction. Yeah. And for us, we've dealt with them many times. However, when it came to our actual home being tested for mold and health, because we know we've already bought the home, we're living here, we're experiencing some of that, brain fog, that chronic fatigue, dry cough, some of these mold-related symptoms, we don't want that inspector who doesn't know what they're doing. And so when you guys came on to do your inspection, it was unreal. In the 18 years I've been a broker, I've never experienced this type of inspection. In fact, we would never call you because you would kill the deals.
You're not the first person that I've caused a problem. Well, I haven't done that for you, but I've done it for others and it hasn't been good.
Yeah, I definitely would not call you if I wanted a deal to go through. But being on the flip side of this, where we want the best, Matt and I do feel that we had the best inspection for our home. It was a lot to take in. And I want to talk about actual findings.
Yeah.
Because I think when you and I and Matt had gone over the results, I had no idea how the mold, okay, there are no visible signs of mold in our home. I don't think we identified any active leaks either in our roof. There were no current signs of water intrusion. And everything, as far as we can tell, is fine. I don't have any visible signs of mold or even possible signs of dampness. So to my shock, when we had gone over some of the major areas, when I had seen the photos of the mold, the black mold that was developing in the structural beams of our attic, a question I had said to you was, Brian, how the hell did this end up in my attic? Is this normal? Give us some context.
Yeah. So every house is going to have mold in the structural components to some extent, right? Even my place, I have my eyes, I go through my house, right? So like, I don't have mold problems in my house, but I know that if I gutted my whole house, there would be framing material that had mold on it, right? And so
now, why is that though? Let's go even deeper. Why is it not uncommon to find that framing material would have mold?
It's because of how it's stored and how homes are built. So two things. One, most homes that are built, actually, I don't know if I've ever seen a home that's protected from the elements while it's being built. Your building, your structure's up, your framing's up, even before you close it, even when you're building and it rains. Yeah. Guess it rained. Cool. Now I just got water all over the structural components of my house and I'm not drying it out properly. And I'm not, addressing anything that might have resulted in terms of growth on that as the result of the rain. Right. And so that's one thing that happens. The other thing is all of the wood and the lumber, and it's just all stored like from the actual source areas where you get it all to build, right? So the large like lumber companies that hold all of it, it's not all covered. Like I was literally just driving through Texas. I did an inspection in Texas for can't name who they were, but somebody in Texas. And I was driving down the street and there was like this big lumber yard and they had a big area that was covered where they had lumber, but then they had all this other lumber just sitting outside and it was raining. And I was just like,
that's insane.
And it was so now like, I don't know if you've done this.
Well, we need Mark and Steve, by the way, to get, to production, like to start educating these contractors.
They are chomping at the bit to get out and talk about all this stuff all the time. And so I think that's like another piece of it, right? So you have building materials that just inherently are coming in and there's problems, right? And so I've worked with some clients who are like custom building their spaces and they're like, how should we do this to prevent stuff? I'm like, well, actually Steve did this when his house was built and he wasn't a custom build. He was like in a track build, but Steve was a part of every second of this and walking, and being all this. He would look at the materials coming in and he would just say, nope, something else. Nope, something else.
Oh, wow.
And so he was like approving all of like literally each beam that was coming in, like Steve was approving the beams. I know most people aren't going to necessarily do that, but then the second route is if you can, once you're framed, you can actually have the house remediated at that point before you build. So you have a remediator come in and they come and they remediate and treat all the structural components. So that way you know that you're starting at a clean slate before you enclose, before you seal, before you do all that. So if you have the ability to do that, like that's something that you could do too.
In hindsight, I would have done that, but I didn't build the home, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the actual results. We have a ton of this moldy structural wood. And my concern as a homeowner is, how do we treat this? Do we have to knock down the home and rebuild? Like, our minds go to the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But actual treatment isn't that dramatic, right? For something like this.
No, if you're exposed, you're like attics, crawl spaces where you're not, you have walls and drywall and you're all that stuff. And it's just exposed, like framing components. So your 2x4s, 99% of the time can be treated and you don't have to remove them. The only time you'd really talk about removing them is if they're like so water damaged that they've been like structurally compromised or deteriorating. There's termite damage in all of them because of the moisture, something like that. But like outside of that, generally all of that can stay, right? So the big thing about remediation is source removal. That is the big thing. And I think the biggest mistake that happens is, and it's not to anyone's fault, at least the homeowner's fault. And I don't even think it's to like the remediator's fault necessarily
I just
either.
think because the industry itself has not elevated to a standard.
Agreed.
I think that's just where we are.
Completely agreed. And so a lot of times what will happen is that the remediators will propose like alternate solutions that are cheaper and not as intrusive. They'll be like, oh, we're going to fog the house with this magic fog and it's just going to get rid of everything. And I just like laugh. I'm like, they're like, oh, well, you know, this fog, it does this. It's like, that's wonderful. Like, it's getting behind every wall. It's getting into every nook and cranny of the house. And even if it did, let's say that it did do that and it got in, which it doesn't, like there's no way that it's going to get to all those spaces. But let's say that it did. The foundational principle behind mold remediation is source removal. It's not killing. It's not decontaminating. It's not denaturing. It's removal. And this is literally written. So like while the inspector world doesn't have like hard licensing and certifications and requirements, you know, there are industry guidelines and standards that are built for remediation for different things like that become the reference points. And it's just so funny to me because I actually just uploaded the whole thing to ChatGPT the other day. And I just started asking it questions because like I used to have to read this like, you know, hundreds of pages, right? I'm like, oh, now I could just upload the whole thing and talk to it. Like, this is great. And I was like asking it questions I kind of knew the answer to, but I was like, can you show me like where this is in here so I can pull this out? And I was just trying to get like clarification, like, is it okay to use encapsulate paints to solve something, which I know it's not, right? But like, show me where it's in here. It's like, literally it's in here. It's like, you should not use this biocides. You should not use this to kill anything. Killing is not it's all in there, right? So you have remediators that are going into homes and they're not abiding by the industry standard guidelines, yet there's no rules or checks and balances to make them have to abide by the guidelines.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
this is the problem.
Yeah.
And I think that mold is such a big issue, you know, and unfortunately homeowners are having to get sick, I feel, before they're having to take this stuff seriously.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I found pretty shocking was that not only was the mold growing in the attic due to humidity as well, right? So it was a combination, you had mentioned, of having that moldy wood, but then the humidity being over 50. Was that the number?
So 60 is the number.
60.
I prefer when I see it to be under 50 because you'll get fluctuations, right? So the way that the humidity piece works, there's different mold types that require a different amount of water at a different duration to grow. There's a kind of a set of mold types that they just need humidity to spike 60% for 24 hours. And that's all they need, and they'll start growing, right? And when you think about that, and you say, okay, that's very minimal of what you need. And I mean, California is not a super humid place, but it's also not like the driest in the world, right? But like, think about a place like Florida or the Carolinas or the Northeast or the Northwest or pretty much anywhere else in California, Vegas, and Arizona. You're going to have humidity that's just naturally higher in those places. And your attics are not air conditioned and your crawl spaces and basements are not air conditioned. So it's not a question, honestly, of if there's a problem in your attic, it's how bad it is. Right. I mean, because you're not setting the space up to succeed. Like, it's going to happen.
And when homes are built, we're not thinking about putting dehumidifiers in these areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's actually a good point, maybe for building and safety. Once this mold, issue becomes more prevalent and people are starting to speak up about it, I don't see a downside to having that as something that building and safety should include.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, because I know for us, once we do the remediation, one of the things I'd asked you, I said, Brian, there's mold everywhere. It's like, so here I am reverting back to sounding like everybody else because I'm feeling defeated. And I'm like, okay, Brian, but it's everywhere. So we're going to fix this. And then what, right? So I know what my steps are to get better, but then how do I prevent and mitigate this from happening again?
So can I, we talked about like the attic and the beams and stuff.
Yeah.
I do want to like shift though, because there's definitely stuff there, but there's other things.
Of course.
Right? And the most of what we find in homes, so we talk about how do we prevent, how do we stop, things from happening. Mold is a formula. It's water plus building material equals mold growth. That's the formula. And so You can't change the building material because the houses are built, right? So if you're going to adjust that formula, the only variable you'll have is the water. That's your variable for mold. And so a lot of other areas in the house were around places where there's moisture sources, right? Sink areas, bathroom areas, toilet areas, areas where there was external water intrusion coming from the outside, like into the lower basement levels or something like that, right? And so the short answer to like, how do you prevent this stuff from happening is to be much more aware of at least your higher water probability areas. And it's interesting because this happens a lot just in life, I think, with human nature. If something happens more often, even if it's not okay, we normalize it.
That's so true.
And then we're like, oh, well, that happens. And so I say that because then I think about kitchen sinks are the perfect place for this. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a sink. Faucets drip. Disposals leak. This happens. But I know where the water came from, and it happens all the time. All of a sudden, that means it's okay. Guess what doesn't know where the water came from and gives no F's about it? The cabinet. It has your house does not know. All your house knows is, did moisture touch this thing? And there it goes, right? So because our brains get in the way of a lot of this stuff, we start downplaying and minimizing and normalizing things that we shouldn't be normalizing because it happens all the time, or like, well,
that's so true.
And so I think like that's a big piece of the prevention. It's almost to like retrain your brain. It's funny. I was on the Human Upgrade, Dave's podcast, and he described me as Neo from the Matrix. And it's funny. He's like, you just walked in and saw like ones and zeros everywhere. And it's training your brain to get rid of like the context around stuff and the rationale and the reasons why it's okay and this, that, or the other, and just focus on what am I actually seeing? And let me get rid of all of the normalizing and stuff. And you just being aware like that is going to help so much in prevention.
I think that makes a lot of sense, is just look at the facts and look at what's actually happening. And then if A happens, this is my B response. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. No, that's so true. But there was also something you had mentioned to me that made me feel like, okay, I can do this. We're going to remediate the house. And I think one of the recommendations might have been to put like a dehumidifier or something, right? Underneath the crawl space, maybe up in the attic, like readers, like humidity readers, things like that. And so I just felt that this journey so far has been very eye-opening. Talk about the Matrix. I think I took the red pill. Is it the red pill?
I forget which color it is.
I took the pill that unveiled everything.
Now you see everything.
And my brain just goes to that. It goes to, wow, how did I not notice this? Or I just feel so vigilant and so thankful and grateful for the education, because I do feel that what we inspect and what you provided, what Corey provided, was a lot of education. Because at the end of the day, hiring your company to come and do an inspection is one thing. But to take control of our health, especially when you're dealing with mold symptoms and you're being affected by your environment, we want to feel empowered to know and to feel educated. Yeah. And not just, obviously, we're going to rely on you moving forward for these inspections, but to know that what are these things we need to look for, Brian? How often do we need to have our HVAC systems checked to make sure that they're functioning well? Are we looking for leaks, condensation? What are these things that we're looking for? One of the other things that I realized too in the report is that we have a mini split up where my children's study area is. And I had put that there because, and I learned this from Michael. He said, Johanna, he says, usually if you have to put a mini split in a room, it's because it's not getting proper circulation. And I didn't think about that because everything has access to the HVAC systems. We have 7 units in the property. But for some reason, this second floor study room was either really hot or really cold. It wasn't getting the airflow it needed. And what he explained to me that was like a light bulb was, if you move into a home and an HVAC unit goes down, is a homeowner more likely to just replace it with the same tonnage? Is it a 3-ton, 5-ton? which is what I did and what I would assume 99% of people do? Or are they actually going to take the time to do what's called a J load and see if anything has been changed? Do we need to increase the size of these units to get proper airflow, which never occurred to me? And I've been in real estate for long enough so that you would think I would know this stuff. I had no idea. I wasn't thinking in that way. And he said these mini split systems are riddled with issues because they condensate a lot.
Yeah.
And so that one particular unit that was in my kid's study room had like 10 times the amount of mold inside the unit. And every time I think, do I turn this on? Definitely not turning it on. But that was just like another piece of education that I've gotten from working with you and, and the family.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael, our other cousin, who owns Home Cleanse, which is the remediation side of the work. So we do the diagnosing and Michael comes in and does the cleanup and the fixing and stuff. And it's very blessed to be in the family.
It is. It is. I know you also you also talk a lot about educating your clients on, making sure that the mold inspection is not done by the remediation company. I know you were very big on that. Can you explain to people who might not understand the conflict of interest, why that's important?
There's the conflict of interest, but then there's just like another side of it too. So, but like the conflict of interest side, if I'm a remediator and my job is to come in and get paid to remove walls and do demo and do cleanup, wouldn't it be in my best interest to say that there's more problems here and I need to do more stuff, right? That's the general conflict of interest. There's actually states that don't list, like Texas doesn't allow it. Florida, New York, there's some other ones that it's illegal to do both of those, right? Not everywhere in the country, but a few states. That's the conflict of interest. What's funny is that I don't even think the remediators would be able to find enough to jack up their bills, like frankly, right? Because that's not their area of expertise, right? And I use this analogy all the time. Like, everybody who watched Grey's Anatomy, right? So you got Meredith Grey, and she's just like this superhero at diagnosing stuff that can't be diagnosed, right? And then you have Derek Shepard, who's the surgeon, right? Meredith Grey diagnosed all this stuff. She's not going and doing the surgery.
That's right. That's a great analogy.
She's great at figuring the stuff out. She doesn't have the 20 years, 30 years of like the scalpel and the this and the that going. It's two completely different things. The remediation side is surgery for your house. That's what it is. And when you're doing it in a health lens, it's the equivalent of Derek Shepard cutting your brain open or cutting your head open and making sure he doesn't do something that just kills you on the spot in your brain. It's very, very specific. And you got to be really good at that, right? I know conceptually everything that needs to be done in a remediation. If you stuck me in the room and told me to do it, I've never done it before. Right. So would I be able to stumble through it? I mean, maybe, but I'd probably be calling Michael every 5 minutes, right? He'd be like, why don't you just have me do this? And so there's very big differences between the two. And it's really important to understand that when you're going through a process and your goal is to have it done the best way it can be done, and there's steps within the process. See, this is very common in the medical world. Hey, you're going to go to your general practitioner. We're going to run your general test. Whoa, your white blood cell count's weird. Cool. Now I'm going to send you to an oncologist. The oncologist is going to go through and they're going to do very specific testing around the concept of that to try to figure out what's going on. Their goal is to figure out what type of cancer is it, where is it spread, where is it located, and how can it be treated, right? Does it have to be removed? Do we do chemo? Can we just do keto diet? And maybe that helps, right? And whatever it is, that's the Meredith Grey, that's the us, right? So that's what we're doing. After that, let's say it's tumors, they have to have surgery. Then they go in and they say, okay, but the surgeon knows exactly where the tumors are. If you skip the middle part and you say your white blood cell count is low, just imagine this in this scenario and how crazy this is. White blood cell count is low. This is weird. I'm going to send you to the surgeon and they're going to cut you from your throat to your stomach and they're just going to look around for tumors. That's
what people are doing.
I know. It's crazy.
That is so crazy.
Yeah. And so it's
what's even, just to add to that point, I've had people come to my clinic that have been very unhealthy from mold. And when I ask them their story, I had a mold inspection done XYZ mold inspection. I had it remediated, but I'm still feeling sick. So how many of those clients are you guys getting? Because it starts from the inspection, from the diagnostic.
So many.
This is what I'm experiencing.
So there was 2 years ago, I launched a training program that's called Mold Finders Method. And then for months, I was doing webinars multiple times a week, teaching about it, ultimately like saying, if you want to buy this training program, right? So it's like a process for people to get into it. It's called Mold Finders Method, taught you how to look in every area of your house. Mold Finders Method is how I train my team. What to look for, where to look for it, how to test it. Like all of our team are, Mold Finder certified, if you will, right? Which maybe I'll turn that into a real thing.
I have to take that course.
I'll give it to you. And so in this webinar that I did to talk about this, you kind of set it up. Here's where I come from. Here's my story, like all these things. And then I talked about exactly what you just brought up. Here's most people that come through us. They've not been feeling good for a period of time. They go to their primary doctor. Their doctor says everything is fine. They're still not feeling good. And they go back and forth through this for sometimes years before they even get to the point where they're like, oh, functional medicine is a thing that actually helps you figure out what's going on with you. And you don't just get to prescribe something. Then they find a doctor that understands environment and they connect the dots from mold, right? That timeline can take 1 to 5 to 10 years, depending on the person, to even get to that spot. Then you find the doctor. Now the doctor's like, hey, you have a mold issue. You got toxins in your body. You've got inflammatory mark, whatever they're doing to kind of diagnose up. And they say, there's mold in your house. You need to figure out what this is. So then the person goes and they go onto Yelp and they say, I need a mold inspector.
I'm a Yelper.
Yeah, I'm a Yelper for some things. You know what I'm not a Yelper for? Like eye surgeries.
That's
and
right.
things
That's
like
right.
that. I'm a Yelper for where do I want to go eat tonight?
That's right.
Or, hey, who cleans carpets great?
Yeah,
or
but
whatever.
you're right. People are using it. People are using it beyond those more casual things.
Yeah. They go to Yelp. They look for mold inspector near me. Oh, this guy's got 5 stars. People seem to like him. That's cool. Listen, your customer service it's important, but it's not an indication of how good you are at what you do. Right. And so like judging someone off their stars to have them come in is not an indication of if they know what they're doing or not. And so what happens, these people come in, they do exactly what we've just been talking about they do. They get a bill of health back that says there's nothing in your house. They go to the doctor. Like, I had somebody come in, there's no problem in my house. And the doctor's like, all right, well, maybe it was somewhere you lived before, I guess. Okay, let's start treatment. Let's see how things go. It's not progressing the way that the doctor thinks it should be. They're like, I really think you have a problem in your house. Is that what the doctor says?
And that period could take long too, from the time where we're hiring, these inspectors who don't know how to look for mold properly. These patients are getting sick, and that time where the doctor is still trying to, use binders and all these other therapies to get this patient healthy could last years.
Absolutely. And depending on the doctor and how pushy is not the right word, how insistent they are in making sure that it's handled the right way, right? But like, if you're going to start a protocol, it doesn't work overnight, right? So your minimum probably looking 6 months for them to figure out, like, are we seeing progression or not? But like, when you have a certified person who comes in and says, you don't have a problem, you now have a false sense of security. You've now checked your house off the list. That can't be the problem. The problem has to be somewhere else. When you now get to the point where the doctor's like, I really think you should be doing this, one of 2 things happens with the patient. One, they're like, I had someone come in my house and they said, no, I don't trust you anymore. You can't get me healthy. And they go somewhere else. They go find another doctor.
That's
crazy.
Right. That's right.
So now what's happening is they're taking this doctor who is way more qualified to be doing what they're doing than the guy on Yelp that has 47 5-star reviews. And they're making a decision that's completely sidetracking their health progression. And they're putting more value in the Yelp guy than they are in the doctor, right? That's the first thing that happens. Now, if for some reason, if they're on the other side and they do trust the doctor, right? And they're working, they're like, okay, we're going to hire someone else. We're going to go in, still going to go to Yelp because I don't know where else to go, but we're going to talk to them some more. We're going to tell them what the first guy did. We're going to tell them they didn't find anything. Your first inspection probably is going to be somewhere around $800. That's what the first, I've literally thrown these numbers out.
But that's what it costs.
Yeah. I've thrown these numbers out to people when I've talked to them on the phone. They're like, how did you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I've been doing this long enough. I know.
That's what it costs.
And then the second inspection, so they're going to tell that person, now that person will be like, oh, I gotta find something, but I have an opportunity here to maybe like do some more testing or whatever. Their bill is going to probably be somewhere around 13 to 15 to 1800 for that person to come in. That person's going to come in, they're going to go do whatever they do in the house. And at the end of that, they're going to come and they're going to say, I found it. I found the thing. And the person's going to be like, oh my God, fine. Thank God. I've been going through this journey. We finally found the thing, right? They're like, here it is. It's in this room. You're going to cut this out right here and we're going to fog and you're going to be great. And the poor person has all this hope now, right? Because they've been wanting someone to tell them that they found the thing. So now they're going to spend money on remediation. So they spend $800 on the first, they're spending, let's say $1,500 on the second. They're paying whatever they're paying for their medical treatments all the way through that whole time period. They're going to probably spend somewhere around 10 to 15 grand on the remediation because the fog itself is like 10 grand. Dude, what the best racket ever. I'm literally going to put some solution in a little fogging machine. I'm going to charge you 10 grand,
That's 10 grand?
to spray this around.
My.
And they're going to come out the back end and it's going to be the same loop. They're going to go back to the doctor. The doctor's like, no, it's not there.
So this is why I was so cognizant of the fact that this was happening, because people were coming into my clinic getting EBU treatment for mold and ozone therapy. And they were like, my home was just remediated. I'm still sick. This is my biggest nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so this story happens all the time. Right. And then the doctor finally like, go talk to these guys. So they'll go to another doctor. Somebody gets to us. They tell this story. We go in the house and we find 30 things. I will tell you this, like right now, undoubtedly, if your doctor tells you that you have a mold issue, it is not one thing in your house. It is not 3 things in your house. It is 100% of the time in your house. I'm not even exaggerating that number. I've never had a referral come from a practitioner. It's not just doctors. It's who we talked about too, right? There's like all these different functional focused nutritionists and all these different people. I've never, ever had someone come from one of those where they're like, yes, there's a mold issue here and not found multiple mold problems in their home. It's not 1 or 2. It's 5 or 10 or 15 or 50, depending on the size of the house, right?
Because by the time we're our health is getting impacted, there's an extensive amount of like overload in our environment. And it's just at a point where it's a problem.
Well, it's interesting because you think about like what your body's built to detox. It's what's supposed to do, right? The problem is if you are overloading it too fast, it can't keep up. The only way for it to be overloaded so fast is there for it to be so much that's loading it that it can't keep up. And that's not 1 thing, 2 thing, 3 things. That's a number of things that are compounding. And then you have longer term exposure to it. And you add those 2, it's no different than toxicology. It's dose and duration. If you have high dose, which is multiple areas of mold in your house, and you have high duration, which is I live in my house all the time, you're probably going to have a reaction to that.
That's right. Yeah. Wow. So at the end of the day, and I've said this to you, Brian, multiple times, I'm so thankful and so grateful that our first shot was with you guys. And we, when we thought about mold inspection, we knew we needed something different. And that just was because of our background in real estate, knowing we needed more.
Yeah.
Matt and I are very happy that you're on our side to kind of help guide this project. I got to say,
I feel very lucky to have met you guys.
Thank you.
It's helping people is wonderful and it's a great thing. There are certain people that are almost like resistant to it, but they're doing it maybe not because they don't want to, but because it's just overwhelming. It's a lot, right? And then there are people that are just like, we're in this, let's figure this out. And it really feels like the team that is really needed. Like we can only do so much on our end and the other person has to be open and willing and having the conversations. Let's figure out the best path. And you guys have been, that, right? So I think it's that combination that really helps to drive results.
I agree. And, it's not easy getting this information. And I think accepting that there is a problem. There's a major problem. By the time you guys get involved, I feel like there's a major problem that you guys are uncovering is a lot to take. So there's that psychological piece too.
It's a lot. And you touched on it earlier, but like just to kind of come back around to it, the prioritization of what to run at is so important, right? And you don't have to most of our clients don't remediate every single thing we find. We're really good at finding stuff. There's stuff everywhere. We're really good at finding it. Just because we found all of it doesn't mean that you're required to fix all of it in order to reach your health goals of where you're going.
I think that's a great point too. Because I'm very type A. And so when you give me a laundry list of stuff, I want to ace and get all of those things done.
Yeah.
But you said very early on, Johanna, you guys can do this in chunks. You can do it in stages. You don't have to do it all. And I really liked hearing that because it was very overwhelming.
You know what's interesting is I used to not believe that, right? And this just goes back to like the evolution and like how being so connected to the doctors and like the experts on our end now helps shape how we do things. 7, 8, 10 years ago, all the doctors were saying, you can't be exposed to anything. That's what they were saying. Because it's all new. It's all still so new, right? Like it literally just got late 90s, early 2000s of when it came on the radar that it was even a thing. So if you're talking about like just like the long, like zoom out, like the timeline of where we are, we're only like 25 years into this. Like there's not a lot of history and understanding like what to do. And at the beginning, there wasn't a lot of people figuring it out. So then the learning and the adjusting and stuff takes longer and longer because there's not as many people there. Well, now it's much bigger, right? And so, I saw probably maybe like 6, 7 years ago is probably when I first started seeing like the talk track out of the health side of things kind of changing a little bit. And it was less about avoidance, zero exposure. You have no hope. There were doctors that wouldn't even treat you if you were still had any exposure. They're like, we're not going to treat you because it's not going to work. Like, we're not going to do it. And I'm just like, that's freaking crazy. Right. And so now, because there's just been so many more people doing it, like it's different. It's like, hey, listen, your body is meant to handle X amount of stuff, right? Like if your body is meant to handle this much exposure and you're being exposed to this much stuff, do you need to go all the way to zero? Or
to start to see a benefit?
Or do you just need to go to like here,
that's right.
like just barely below? And like for me, it's been confirmed with multiple doctors. We're like, hey, it's we try to run at the things that are most impactful. We try to get the biggest wins early. We try to like reduce as much as we can within the kind of guidelines of what we think the person, needs in terms of a reduction, right? And it all comes down to the idea that like people progress even if you don't do every single thing. Now, how much you have to do is different for the person, right? Depending how sensitive they are. But that's why we built the tiering system. Like once we started understanding that the health side was seeing success without doing everything, it's like, okay, well, now we need to figure out a way to help guide what are the things to do, right? And so that's how the whole tiering process came up. I
love that. And one more thing before I let you go that I think is so important is that when we realized we all had mold exposure, I opted to do the Vibrant Total Tox labs for myself and my 3 children. We already knew Matt had the mold exposure, mold toxicity.
Yeah.
I wasn't confirmed with myself or my 3 children. I sent you all of those labs and you said, okay, Johanna, let me draw a correlation between what is showing up in your bodies and what is actually prevalent and in unhealthy levels in your home. I thought that was so invaluable. You did that like within a day. We talked about it and you said, okay, I've got it. Like these are the things that we're going to look for, these source molds, these areas. And that made me really feel like you guys understood the journey. You understood the intention of what we were trying to do. And I was impressed.
Well, I appreciate that. It's so important. Actually, the dust test, which is an at-home test kit we built, is basically ERMI. It's the same mold. It's the same whole profile that ERMI has. The problem with ERMI is its interpretation is effectively now been proven to not be reliable. But it doesn't give you anything else. It's just like, here's all your molds, go figure it out, right? With the dust test, what you just described, we built into the dust test result reporting. So I know that you haven't seen it because you ran all the ERMIs, right? But like if somebody went and just did the dust test, they're going to get the exact same information you get on an ERMI. But when they get their stuff back, they're getting a correlation of how many molds in the house are tied to the molds that are in their bodies from their Vibrant, from their Mosaic, from whatever clinical test they did. And it's going to show them right there.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And yeah, it's a big piece. It's something that we offer and we do for people, because you talk about priorities. It's not just where's the most mold in the house. It's how do I spend time in the house? Like who's the most sensitive person in the house and where do they spend the most time? You take that same philosophy of toxicology where it's dose and duration, right? Well, like, is a perfect example. My wife is in the laundry room more frequently than I am. I think of like prioritizing in two different layers. The first layer is I call exposure zones, and it's where you spend time in the house the most. So I break them down 1, 2, 3. 1, a place you spend 4 to 8 hours every day. It's your bedroom. Obviously, you're sleeping there. For other people like me, my office is a place that I do that for myself. Other people have other areas in their house. Second is daily less than 4 hours. Kitchen, living space, whatever, basic spaces. Third is I'm not in there every day. I'm kind of in there every now and then, right? So like for me, laundry room is tier 3 for me. For my wife is tier 2, for example. So if there was an issue in the laundry room and my wife was the person who had the most severe issues going on, then we would be prioritizing the laundry room higher because we're gearing it towards her because she's the one that's the most sensitive as compared to me.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you have to tier based on the individual or overlapped individuals and where they spend the most amount of time and how they live in the house. And if you look, that is your first like kind of filtering layer. So basically the way the tiers work is the first thing you have is just the A's through E's. They're all based on just the raw lab data. Mm-hmm. So just off the numbers, here's where the most mold is, second, third, fourth, and it kind of works down. Then you layer on top, okay, well now how does most affected individual spend time in the house? Mm-hmm. And that person, if a priority 1 area for how they live in the house is a B tier item, you'd probably choose to bump that up into something that might above an A tiered level item that might be a plate like the laundry room. That's right. So you would like maneuver those around and like adjust it a little bit more. And then we layer on what we did with you, which is, okay, if you have toxins in your body, here's where aspergillus is the highest in the house and the source. Now you layer that on top of what you just built. And now you say, I have a tier A that is a priority 1, but then the priority 1 is actually not aspergillus heavy. It's something else. And I'm going to layer in the one that's most connected to what's in my body. And like, that's the formula for prioritizing. And if you do that, that's how you could apply, the 80-20 concept to what you're doing and get the best bang for your buck.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for spending time with me and us and going over a little bit more about what you do. And you guys have such a niche market carved out for yourselves, and you're doing really great work.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. All the conversations we've had. Yeah, it's been great. So thank you.
Of course. Take care. This podcast is sponsored and brought to you by One Body Medicine. You can learn more by visiting onebodymedicine.com. That's the number 1, bodymedicine.com. You can also follow the show on social media under the handle Pure Wellness Pod. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.